Welcome back to Barely Built Right, guys. Just wanted to share with you some good news before we get started real quick. I have actually gotten my eye fixed. That's right, I got corrective surgery for the traumatic cataract I suffered when I took a broken cutoff wheel to the face. Check out my other videos here and here to see some more on how that injury happened. But I am very excited. I have gotten back to 20/25 vision with glasses, so I am very thankful for the outcome on that. And of course, thank you for all of your continued support throughout this whole ordeal. It's amazing what's come out of it. Now with that, let's dig into the boat and see what I've got done since we last spoke. So after I put the floor in, my first item on the to-do list was to V-groove the joints between the three floor panels. This is pretty straightforward. I took a heavy grinder and just took a chunk out along the seam of each floor panel, and then took fiberglass mat and resin and glassed it back over. Next on the to-do list was to take urethane and spread that between the floor and the sidewalls of the boat to fill in that little gap that's left from the height or thickness of the floor. So I spread the same construction adhesive that I used underneath the floor, which is compatible with fiberglass, through these gaps and smoothed it out as best I could. Doesn't have to be perfect, we're still going to put a little bit over the top of it. I did the same process for the sides of the floor. I V-grooved out the edges where it's going to bond to the side of the boat so that I can lay fiberglass strips down and seal the floor to the sides of the boat and make this one big old waterproof single piece. I am just finishing prep to lay down these strips of fiberglass mat that will join the floor to the sidewalls of the boat. I've got all of my pieces cut. They are 4-inch strips, and I've tried to cut them as straight as possible because once the piece is laid into position, I know that you may see this top edge. It may have just a little hump. I'm going to smooth it down and everything and try and get it looking pretty. But just in case that is visible, I want to have a somewhat consistent line all the way across. At the floor, I've grooved it out so that it will be flush with the floor going up to the sidewalls. However, I didn't want to take too much material away from the sidewall since that is the outside of the boat. So I wanted to leave as much of that intact as possible, therefore I am going to put it on the surface of the sidewalls and then smooth it out after that. In the seam here, I laid urethane and sanded that all down, bonded those two pieces. However, there were some uneven areas and some spots that sunk a little bit as it dried, so I have filled in some of those voids. I keep wanting to call it fodder. I don't know, is fodder the right word? But it's essentially fiberglass mat strips and pieces that I have torn up and shredded somewhat strategically, somewhat in certain positions and certain lengths. And some of them are strips that have been spread out. I just grab them, pinch them, and tear them apart slightly, and then also rub them to split the layers a little bit. That fluffs them up a little bit so that they can fill some of this uneven gap where the adhesive sank. So did you see my mistake there? That big nasty blob on the left side of the floor is actually where water intruded. And the reason it intruded is because I left that exposed V-groove edge open. I had already finished sealing the right or starboard side of the boat with the resin and mat. However, I had not yet laid the left side, and that was about the time I got the call to go in for my corrective surgery. Come back from that, I'm getting back on the boat, and just in that short period, not even standing water or rain, but just the humidity inside the boat here in Florida was enough to penetrate into that exposed wood. The moisture seeped about an inch into the exposed edge there, but in order to make sure I got all of the moisture out, I had to go even further than that and well further out and grind down about 5 to 6 inches beyond where the water intrusion was, and then reinforce that with more mat and fiberglass to make sure it would be solid there in that spot of the floor. Once all the edges were down, it was time to start sanding these joints smooth where the floor meets the sidewalls, as well as carving out a little pocket where the exhaust expansion chamber on the 787 engine is just a little too close for comfort along that edge of the floor and frame rail. So I notched that down and reinforced it again with more mat and resin so that that expansion chamber would have a place to sit. The next exciting development, and where the title of this video comes from, is that I now have a seat. After weeks of scouring on Facebook Marketplace and OfferUp, I hadn't decided if I wanted a bench seat or captain's chairs, and everything I found was either not my style or unaffordable, until I came across this two-person bench seat out of a party pontoon. And it came with tall pedestals, which clearly I'm not going to use for my very short boat, so I let the seller keep those and got a better deal, getting the seat for only $180. Next item was to figure out how to mount this thing. I didn't know if I wanted sliders to make it fore and aft adjustable. I did like the idea of having it removable or reversible so that I could turn it around and face the back passengers when we were stopped. And I came across these quick release swivel mounts that are intended for like fast boat seats. And while they are designed to swivel, clearly they're not going to with my chair because I'm going to use two of them. So I set about making brackets to attach to the plastic tub on the bottom of the seat that I purchased. I used 3/4 inch aluminum channel that I was able to get at Lowe's and drilled holes into it after tapping them properly so that I could screw coarse thread lag screws into the plastic base of the seat. From there, I mounted the proper side of the quick release mounts to those rails and mounted everything to the base of the seat using the hard edges of the molded plastic tub as my references to make sure everything was in alignment. I also created a plywood jig, just a simple rectangular piece cut to fit, for the floor portion of these quick release brackets so that I could mount that to the seat and then use that to mount to the floor of the boat so that I can keep everything in alignment, making sure that things will be able to snap on and off properly. From there, I mounted that plywood template onto centers that I marked using the center beam of the boat and put my template down into the floor so that I could mark my screw locations or my bolt locations. I'm going to remove this piece of plywood and put down two reinforcement plates similar to this one that will give me a little bit more strength since my floor is relatively thin. The seat is a little bit tippy right now as it's rocking the floor, so once I put those in, that should sturdy it up quite a bit. From there, it was time to simply snap the seat onto my new seat pedestals. From here, I'll show you just a few more pan shots of the seat in place, as well as a couple different views of the operation of flipping it around and taking it off of the quick mounts. And that's the latest on the shed ship. Thanks for checking it out. Next time I hope to be working on the rear doghouse and seat portion, as well as possibly doing some gel coat of the interior. Maybe you guys will get to see some of the colors we're going to be working with. We'll catch you then. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.